If you go and browse around your website, specifically the About Us section, there's a great story about the last time you guys moved.
As the story goes, I guess, my dad was like to always, he was in charge still to this day. Grandpa and grandma went on a vacation, and my dad says it was time. He got the whole crew from Sorenson's, and they moved like 4 blocks up to this new store that was already purchased. Grandma came back, and they're like, well, what's going on here?
Welcome back to the Independent Thinking Podcast. This is your host, Rob Stotts. Today's podcast takes us up to Geneva, Minnesota, a town, a very small town, just a few hundred individuals calling Geneva home in Minnesota, about an hour and a half's drive south of Minneapolis, so on the outskirts of the Twin Cities up there. And it's a town that's home to one of Nationwide's members, Sorenson's Appliance and TV, up there in Geneva, a great brand, third-generation owned brand of retailer, and Dak Sorenson, co-owner there at Sorenson's, is was nice enough to take some time and hop into the podcast and chat with us about all kinds of stuff. Dak's got, like so many of our members, I love it, man. It's such a great industry to meet individuals from so many different types of backgrounds, and Dak's no different. A guy that, like many of you, I'm sure, listening to this, that thought maybe it never even crossed your mind that retail was a possibility or that you'd get into the family business. Dak took his expertise and talents and his education as an educator and went and spent some time in education out in Arizona, and eventually found himself back home in Minnesota, in Geneva, and working at the family business. And just so cool to get a take on his background and how he approaches things, and just the way that he's borrowed from obviously it's Geneva, a small town itself, but surrounded by larger communities that they pull in from. But they keep everything that they do true to that small town mindset, that Geneva way of thinking, and it's cool to see how he has applied that not only to their interactions with customers, but the employees themselves, and the way they've sort of set up the way of thinking about coming into work every day, and really building a culture that is so small town, despite being like we said, just a stone's throw from Minneapolis and a much larger metropolitan area up there in Minnesota. But a great story, like so many of them are here at Nationwide Marketing Group with our members, and one we're excited to share. So this is Dak Sorenson of Sorenson's Appliance and TV here on the Independent Thinking Podcast. All right, we are back on the Independent Thinking Podcast, and if you're watching the video version, just to let you know, we're doing this safely. Dak is pulled over on the side of the road, and he stopped everything he was doing to hop on the Independent Thinking Podcast now. But Dak Sorenson, co-owner up there of Sorenson's Appliance and TV in Geneva, Minnesota. I get all that right?
You are correct.
Awesome. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm well. Yourself?
Doing all right, thank you. And you're just Geneva. Now that's like a stone's throw down I-35 from Minnesota, right? You're from Minneapolis.
Yeah, we're about an hour and a half south of Minneapolis.
All right. How is that? Well, you're in like the dead of winter right now out there. So is it like -20 and snow every day? What do you guys got going on?
No, it says 29 on my temperature gauge.
Okay.
Not bad. We've got some snow coming in here tomorrow, I guess, but we'll be fine.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you hopping on and diving into you and the business a little bit. So we're excited to have you guys on the podcast and talk about business up there in Minnesota. So before we dive into the business itself, tell us about yourself, your background, and kind of your path into retail.
Yeah. So the path in the retail wasn't really a path. I'm the third generation. Obviously through high school, college, worked at the family business, summers, weekends here and there, but never was really pushed into it by any means whatsoever. So after college, I decided to take a teaching degree. And I was a physical education teacher, and I went to Arizona for 2 years and taught kickball.
That's awesome. That's a background.
Yeah. So I'm a sports fanatic, so that's what I wanted to do, and we tried it, and it was a nice little run for a couple of years. I coached and everything, but you know what? Home is home. Family's all here, so decided to come back, and we talked with my dad and mom, and we decided to let's give it a go. And we kicked my dad out of the store, and I jumped in.
Well, that's the kind of the things I always love hearing, because I mean, dealing with 5,000 independent retailers, you hear so many different kind of origin stories of retail, right? And a lot of them,
Yeah.
it's like, well, you get a handful that were like, it was destined to be because of the family business, and others that were pushed or, never really thought of anything else. But there's still plenty out there. The backgrounds, that are all over the place, but you still end up like that calling back to home. And I mean, you never felt it. You're saying it yourself. You never felt any pressure, but it was just kind of like it felt right to come home. Is that kind of what it was?
Yeah, I kind of always knew in the back of my head that uh, the Arizona or wherever I would end up after college, I'm glad I did it. It wasn't going to be home. It was just a stopping point, and I would tell everyone, get out of here for a year or two and experience life a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot more out there, and yeah, find out what you want to do. And I did that, and I yeah, couldn't be happier.
No, that's all. And what I mean, talk about some of that time away. What does that give you a chance to do? You mentioned kind of experiencing other things, but like to be able to get away from home and then know that that's there that you can come back to.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a relief. It's always in the back, man. I love to travel. I love to do other things. So I wanted to try working outside, obviously the boundaries of home, and just to see what that was like. Meet new people, different people around the world, culture, and I still have friends and contacts because of teaching, because of that. And I did my student teaching in Australia for four
Wow.
months too, as well. So yeah, I enjoyed every part of it, knowing that the business would possibly be there, and if it wasn't meant to be, right? Um, so it all worked out, I guess, for a purpose, and it's going strong.
How, teaching degree and retail don't necessarily line up. So what's it like coming back home and then having to learn the business? Or was it something you always kind of knew because you, as a family member, it was always around, you were around it?
Yeah, yeah, no, I was always around it, obviously, and I delivered, I installed, and I still do that today. Engaging with people. A customer calls me up still today and said, "Hey, I got something going on with my washer." Hold on, stop. Let me transfer you to a service tech because I have no idea still today. Um, so it's just learning a different avenue of I had to learn the teaching how to how to teach. So it's in the back of my mind, I always knew I could engage with people. I was comfortable meeting people. I wasn't afraid to do that. Now it's just learning, a washer, dryer, refrigerator, dealing with employees, which I'm fine dealing with employees. We got great employees. So, yeah, it was all comfortable. I was fine coming back in.
No, that's all. And you came back to Sorenson's Appliance and TV, as we mentioned up there in Geneva, Minnesota, and a third generation owner. You co-owner with your uncle, is that right?
Yeah, Uncle Tim
Yeah.
Sorenson, he would have been, he's second generation. And his boy, I'm not going to say how many years, but maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, he'll buy his dad out, and he's working there right now. And great guy, great guy.
No, that's awesome. Talk us through what it is, the kind of fabric, the elevator pitch on Sorenson's, and what you guys do. Obviously, appliance and TV, but talk through the store, what you see when you walk in.
So we just moved to a new location here about a year ago. The other location we were there for 40 years or whatever. It's been 50 years, and we just decided, hey, time is right. Let's move to this new building. Add on. Our warehouse is directly behind this new building, so we're like, this is a perfect opportunity to do it. So it's just a new refresh. Our other store was fairly outdated a little bit. Carpet from 1970s. So this store now was a cabinet flooring place. So you walk in and it's all modern, updated, new plumbing, new electrical. So yeah, it's just a kind of a reset for the store, you could say.
No, that's awesome. Well, and I love too, if you go and browse around your website, in specifically the About Us section, there's a great story about the last time you guys moved, and something that
Yeah.
might have happened. I'll let you tell that story.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, as the story goes, I guess, my dad was like to always, he was in charge. He wanted to always be in charge, and still to this day, he still like wants to be in charge. But he gets older, we get, we're in charge now. So grandpa and grandma went on a vacation, as they did every other month. And my dad says it was time. So when he walked out, jumped in the plane, he got the whole crew from Sorenson's, and they moved like 4 blocks up to this new store that was already purchased. And grandma came back, and they're like, well, what's going on here? It just needed to be done, grandpa. Here we are. We're in our new location. And yeah, that was that. No conversations after.
That's a great, you want to make a decision, just make sure that the owner's out of the way and you just up and move the business. And I can't imagine that's how it went down this time around. Sure, it was a little bit more seamless and all inclusive.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we need to do it. Let's just do it. It was a year or two in the making. Yeah, and it just happened.
Well, that's a great opportunity too, right? Because you're moving into a new store. You get to kind of reimagine the showroom and sort of how you have the floor set up. Were there any big changes or opportunities that you guys took advantage of being able to basically reset your business into a new location?
So we did add Cambria countertops to our business because we were strictly just appliances and / little TVs here and there. So we added Cambria on, and that's worked out good for the past year. That's starting to gain some traction a little bit there. But the overall appliances, we're still washers, dryers, and your regular appliances. Sell some TVs on the side, and yeah, it's nothing fancy when you walk in. It's just an open box. Got rows of appliances, and it's who we are. I mean, we're a farming community. We try to be simple-minded, and that's kind of how we go about the whole thing.
You mentioned that community too, and I love something else I learned about, kind of you guys and more so the town you're out of there in Geneva. 500 is the total population. What's it like doing? I mean, I'm sitting here, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a couple million in our backyard and slightly larger community. So what's it like living and working in that small of a community? I mean, you are, like you said, just about 90 minutes south of Minneapolis. So not, too far from a major metropolitan area, but still a really small community that you can get pretty close and tight knit with.
Yeah. I've always said, I live 20 miles away in Albert Lea. That's a town of 20,000 people. I grew up in Geneva where our business is at. And, still to this day, I don't say anything bad about any of the towns around us, but they're all great towns. But, I go to a gymnasium to watch a basketball game or whatever it may be in my hometown. I know everyone. They're there to watch friends. They're there. And, you go to these bigger cities and whatnot, you got the people that are just there to watch their kids. Our gymnasiums are packed with parents, friends, grandparents. It doesn't matter. So growing up in that town of, 500, let's back up. That's 450 people, not 500. I mean, we know the cats and the dogs of our neighbors, right? So it's just home. It's just comfortable. And we have a radius of about 60 miles around us that have towns of, 30, 20,000, 30,000 that we obviously have to pull from. So yeah, it works out good. We're right in the hub of, towns all the way around us that have 20, 30,000. So we're not too far out of the jurisdiction of everyone else.
That's awesome. And I mean, what kind of, knowing that you kind of pull from that larger radius, obviously some competition in and around there. What do you think it is that sets Sorenson's apart from other retailers in your area or that operate around you guys?
Well, listen, I've always said I'm going to do business with an independent person, whether I'm buying a vehicle, whatever I'm buying, a cabinets or flooring. And I think that's the mindset of most people. We'd love to do business with independent people, but let's face it, price is still king to a point. You got to be competitive. But what can you offer now that the box stores can't? And we can always offer service after the sale. We're never going to get beat on pricing. I think it's important that if they have a problem, they can call and ask for Dak or Tim or whoever it may be, and we're firsthand going to get them taken care of. All these contractors that I deal with, I give them my cell phone. I said, guys, call me on my cell phone if you have a problem, because you know what? There's going to be a problem, and you got to get a hold of someone. And here I am. So, we're not going to be any different, I don't think, a whole lot than another independent dealer. I hope not. We're going to try as hard as we can, and we're going to give them the personal touch, before, during, and after the sale.
Well, that's, I mean, obviously a critical mindset, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? It's not a major corporation. You're not, and I think it's even a line on your website as well. Like, every customer, they're not just another number. So you actually get to know them. And I mean, do you think that kind of is born out of that small town mentality and something that you guys are just, it's ingrained in the way you are, not just as, business owners, but as community members and people that live around you?
100%. I go up to the bank, I go to the coffee store, I go to the bar and grill. I know everyone in there, and they know me obviously as well, because it's a small town. And if you do something, they know, good or bad, right? And I ask that person, I'll ask you, do you know your neighbor's two houses down? You may, I don't know, but I know the whole town in Geneva, right? So it's just, and that word spreads as well when I'm doing business, obviously. Hey, go check out Sorenson's Appliance, and they have friends, their friends have friends. So it really, really circulates out. And
How do you,
there's a really good story, and I'll keep this kind of short.
yeah.
About 2 years ago, I was at Nationwide buying show, and I was trying to, drum up some more business. Like, how I need some help. And I was talking to someone there, that's higher up in Nationwide there, and he's like, "Well, what's the population of your town?" I said, "Oh, roughly around just under 500." Okay, well, here's your numbers that you do, and we're fairly strong numbers. And I go, "Well, hold on here, 500 people, not 500,000." He literally got up and walked away and said, "I can't help you." He says, "You're doing just fine." I'm like, "Well," so, but no, we enjoy the small town.
No, I mean, that's awesome. And it's like you said, it's that mentality. And I'm curious, especially with employees and being it kind of, I love that you guys, handle from whether it's the sale to the service side of things, you're there at every step of the way for the customer. So what is it like kind of, sharing that mentality or getting everyone in the company, all your employees to buy into that? Is it again, because they're from the area, they get it, or is it sort of like a kind of like a culture thing that you guys have built over time as well?
I, I I'll say I'm probably one of the luckiest guys I know for having the best employees that I could ask for. Yes, I knew him before I hired him. We go to the golfing, we hang out, we'll go uptown and have a beer or two or a burger. So we're all fairly tightly close. Just a good group of people. And my delivery guys, they all sell. Our sales guys all deliver. So if we run short, people are on vacation, we can all fill in. It's just a nice little home, and we all get the job done at day's end.
No,
So which is kind of nice.
no, that's awesome. And I mean, it kind of, we're coming up to prime time again, where, I know a big theme this show is going to be all about being customer obsessed and the things that our retailers and how we can, how you guys work to make sure the customer is at the center of that experience. Is there anything that you guys, outside of what we've already talked about, that you guys think you go above and beyond with to make sure that, your
Yeah,
customers have that top notch experience that you'd be willing to share?
100%. So I'm big on going to get contractors. A contractor that builds 100, 200 homes a year, it is a tough one to grab, but if I can get them, that's just one little thing. Once I got them in the door, I close the sale. Now it's not up to me anymore. It's up to my delivery crew that has to deliver their appliance and make sure they're happy after the sale. And my delivery crew is top notch. When they leave, the floors are clean, garbage is picked up, and 9 times out of 10, it's a callback saying, "I'm going to recommend those two people that were just at my house." And I got 6 different crews, 8 different crews. So it's great to hear that coming back, that the customer's taken care of after I've got that customer. So it means a
And,
lot.
and I mean that comes from obviously having the right people in there to do that, but it has to be said something too from the top down, right? I mean, is that are you going through and training those guys, offering the tips and advice on how to manage that experience? Because it is, I
Yeah,
mean, it's the last, but it's also the most crucial,
it
arguably,
is.
touch point for the customer.
It really is. And yeah, yeah, I hire them, whatever, but I'm not the professional delivery person that knows all the ins and outs. I give them little tricks here on how to sell or whatever. But at day's end, I hire that guy. I throw him on a truck with a guy that's been there for quite a few years. He trains them in, and away they go the first day. And a week later, they're professionals. Almost, it seemed like. And I've always said you can always train someone. It's just the personality. If they got a good personality and can talk, and they'll be just fine. They'll just be fine.
No, maybe it's I know all you people up there in Minnesota and Minneapolis are fairly you're close enough to Canada that it's like you got that niceness kind of built into you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for the most part, yes.
No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, you guys got a great operation. Anything else you want to share just about, advice that you think's important to, for other independents to hear that, you've kind of, you could attribute to your success. 62 years, almost,
72,
right? 62, 72,
72,
72.
72 years. Yeah. You know what? It all trickles down from top bottom. I've always said, thanks for thanks for grandma for letting grandpa start this thing, right? And if it wasn't for her to able to stay home and raise the family, he wouldn't be able to, do what he did. So, you got to thank where it starts, from grandpa and grandma. And then, it just comes down, the three, my dad and his two brothers, that kept it going. And they were, it was just, business minded, someone who was always there. You ever had a problem, you call one of the so-called owners up and it's going to get taken care of. And what the best thing about it is I can leave for a day or two or go on vacation. I don't have to worry about a thing. Yeah, I'll have some emails and a bunch of stuff I got to catch up on, but it gets taken care of and it's 100% on the employees. And I couldn't speak good enough on the employees that I have.
Oh, that's awesome. And hey, I mean, you guys built a good team and have a long lasting legacy there in a small town, a name that people have come to know and trust. So, I mean, kudos to the family, the team, and everything that you guys have done to build a successful business up there. So here's to, the next 72 years.
We'll see.
No, that's awesome. Well, Dak, we appreciate the time and I'll let you get back to hitting the road and getting to where you need to go. So this was a lot of fun and, hope to catch up soon, maybe at prime time.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. And thanks again to Dak. Just so much fun talking to him and, having him pull over to the side of the road for a podcast and chat with us about the way they do business up there in Geneva. And cool to hear. I love, those customer obsessed type stories, as we're in primetime season here and have that being a big theme of what we'll be talking about down there in Dallas in just a few weeks. And, Dak and the Sorenson's team are no different. They're super, customer first and customer centric in the way they approach business. And I think it's those types of tips that, are so applicable across the entire retail landscape and love being able to share them here with you. So appreciate Dak bringing his insights to the table and talking with us on the podcast. And as always, appreciate you listening to the Independent Thinking Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.